I was going to make a short epilogic comment by saying that I was going to try and drag your attention, not just try, but I was going to get even closer to the more complex strangeness, which I've said such as this before, but many of you by now should be able to feel it when I do it. Not that you necessarily know why, but you should be able to feel it. As far as strangeness, I was also thinking, just as I started to say that, after all this time, what could I say to you people that in the ordinary sense would actually be strange? Think about it a second. Now, if you were in some city and you look down the calendar of mystical events or occurrences, you look down in any city and there'll be things, a UFO group or meeting somewhere, or somebody's in town that have a weekly or nightly channeling from some dead Albanian, maybe. But if you were ordinary middle class, in the bell curve of the city, you might look down at such as that and think, listen, the city is full of weirdness, strangeness. And if you went to one of those, you would expect, if you're ordinary, probably take along your sister-in-law or your brother-in-law, somebody, and you'd expect, ooh, you know, real strangeness that somebody's going to look even weirder than Rod Serling. And so you would expect something weird for somebody, a woman, to suddenly come out from behind a curtain or a room and dressed up in all kinds of chiffon or something and go, I'm having a trance. You know, do something. If you're ordinary, you'd think, now, that's strange. Now, that's what I expected. But now I'm asking you people, what could I do? What could I say? Not do. What could I say that would actually be strange? Now, can I say something finally? Can I say, all right, I'm from another place or another time. What if I said that? Yeah, but yeah, wait a minute. What if I said that, though, and it was just simply to misdirect you, that I did it in such a way like I just did, to where most of you kind of smirked or laughed, like, like to desensitize you, to make fun of it, and then nobody would ever, you know, think, well, that's strange. I just thought of that. I don't know why. I do want to point out one thing, and it may become part of your own intelligence shortly or longly, but I am very close. I'm not going to tell you the date, but I'm very close to closing out Act 1 of this activity. And nobody's ever heard about this, but almost every good production that is visible in the world has at least, that's the standard production, all the way from ordinary Broadway run shows to Sophocles to historical eras, whether you know it or not. I am about to close out the first act. Chapter 1 is about finished. And I'm, of course, suggesting to you this generally. It's not seen the same way in literature, but there are 3 chapters in all books. The beginning, the middle, and the end. I don't care how many numbers they got in there. But at any rate, I am getting very close, in case none of you thought something funny was going on. Funnier? No. I'm about to close up Act 1. What I'm going to get at specifically tonight that is really getting strange, now I may even tell you what makes a more complex strangeness, and when I point it out, it's going to be real, real unstrange. But some of you are going to go, hey, that is what makes things strange. Maybe. But first, there's something that is a corollary that's tied to this in a way that I've never had occasion to bring out, so I'm just going to pull it out and start tonight's sketching by this. And maybe once I pull the heart of tonight's activity to the forefront, I'll come back to this either tonight or some other time, or never. So you always have 3 choices. All right, it's this. This is the opening gambit. Why does man have euphemisms? Why has life produced this in man? In man's language, of course. But why did life give a first word? Like death. Or dumbness, dumb. Why did it give this first word that seemed quite adequate, to say the least, death just about wraps it up. There are most people who think of somebody else as being, boy, is he dumb. You almost want to put a period. Well, why did it do that if it was going to come back along later and come up with passed away? Educationally disadvantaged. Now, I'm not making fun of such as that. That goes into another area that I know some of you may have thought that I've made jokes before, and I'll make some reference to Southern California, and I'll talk about India's space. There's not to be attacked about faddish terms and words. The language is as alive as life is. What makes it subject to a certain feel, if you're in touch with it, that is almost, from a more complex view, almost gets annoying. Not that it matters in the city, is that once one of these fad words or terms catches on, then those in the city are prone to use it to death for a while, in that it's normally the most complex word, the longest multi-syllable word that they know, just because it got popular. But there is nothing open to criticism about faddish words or new terms or people saying, well, so-and-so's in my space. Now, it can sound apparently funny, and they can make fun and criticize it in Omaha, in St. Paul, Atlanta. But there is nothing wrong with it. The language is exploring itself cellularly as much as your nervous system. That was an aside. Now back to the opening move. Why does life do that? Now one more complex response would be what I just said, of the language itself expanding. But what I'm suggesting to you, whether I get much more specific or not, is there is something else at work. Why does life produce a perfectly good word? Like dead. Everybody understands what it means. It's an unconditional word, or dumb. You can think up your own. Why did life do that when it's going to come back around? And dead probably has as many euphemisms as any other word in our language. And then come along with the euphemisms. And don't take what your ordinary intelligence might at first tell you. That, well, it's to help desensitize, since we've already pulled that one out, the demise of people. Rather than just say, well, sir, your cousin's dead. You know, instead of just coming out of a room and tell somebody that, maybe you can come up and say, they're no longer with us. You mean they left town? Well, no. They passed away. Well, sometimes that happens when he eats beans. No, I said, passed away. I said, oh. It is not just what may seem to be a kind of more civilized influence down the road of people attempting to spare others' feelings, to come up with a nicer way of saying something, to say, well, you shouldn't say that that person is dumb. They're probably educationally, or at least culturally, disadvantaged. They've been deprived. But the term educationally disadvantaged. Now you can say, well, that sounds better. It is more, it's taking into greater allowance other people's sensitivities, and etc. Right. Now back to the good basic, to what end is life doing this? Forget whether that's right or wrong. That is no final answer. That is no complex response to the question. That's the kind of thing they already come up with in the city, which you should know if they've come up with in the city, it doesn't tell you anything. But why does life do this, to produce one perfectly good word when it knows that somewhere down the road it's going to start producing one or more euphemisms? What is going on? Now I'm going to tell you part of what's going on. This is not the or a final response to the question I'm presenting to you. But this goes off. And this is related to something that's related to something that I'm about to talk about. But here this goes. Is that whether you realize it or not, everybody has a second language. Everyone speaks a second language. That doesn't matter, of course, as you should already guess, whether you would say that your only verbal, literal language is English, or Spanish, or Italian. Everybody, no matter what your native tongue is, everybody has a second language. Think about that for a second. You do. Everyone does. Now, do you want to get on with the more complex and the more strange? Here's where I was headed for tonight. And let me tell you what strange is from the view of this. Strange is not someone saying, in 2 minutes I'm going to roll my eyes back and put on funny nose and glasses and my voice will change and it won't be me anymore, it will be Zeus. It will be some dead person talking to me, or somebody walk out and say, hello, I'm not from this planet. I'm from Orion and I'm here to save the world. That's not weird. Or somebody say, I talk to God. Now that seems strange and weird still to many people in the city. But let me tell you what strange is. This is revolutionary strangeness, only for people so caught up as most of you are. Here is the strangeness that's not recognized. It's the kind of thing I'm about to put in very simple words, a short sentence. And what is so strange, it's not going to be anything astounding. It's so strange on this basis that a lot of people sort of know this, what I'm about to tell you, and a lot of people sort of don't. A lot of people sometimes sort of know it and other times sort of don't, and a whole lot of people, if they hear about it, sort of don't see whether it's important whether you know about it or not know about it. You remember this scenario I used to pull out, that if man's idea of gods, a God came back and had the secret, the thing everybody's been wanting to know, that I told you it would be so bland, whatever it was, it'd be something like, he'd say, all right, you guys are right, God is love. And the whole planet go, just knew it, just knew it. What's happened? Nothing, if they just knew it. For other purposes, when I brought this up before, I also tried to get you to see that it would have to be something that everybody would go, I knew it. Because if they didn't know it, and he or she said it, everybody go, what? And everybody go, well, I heard I had a second language, but that ain't it, because I don't know what the hell he said. It didn't make any sense. It'd have to be something that people go, knew it. Right? But here's the strangeness that nobody recognizes. Now, I've done it before. I may do it again, but I'm about to do it here in just a minute. I'm going to tell you something, and sometimes I preface it, and I warn you, I say, well, now, it's going to sound simplistic, or you're going to think you already knew it, and you don't. But that's what I've been referring to. This is a real hidden strangeness. When I say strangeness, I'm not being euphemistic. I'm talking about strange. I'm talking about weird. Because I understand it, but life is arranged in such a way that I can tell you something without beating around the bush and put it right in nice, simple words, and a whole lot of people on this planet, if I could stand in for the gods, if I could do one of that and get everybody lined up, and I could show up and say, all right, I'm going to tell you something important, and I told them what I'm fixing to tell you, a whole lot of them would go, not just, I knew it. You got to get down to a good axiom. You got to get down to a cliche, which is the only thing men's guides speak in case you never noticed, according to men. But the one I'm about to do, a whole lot of people on the planet would go, yeah, I kind of knew that. And a whole lot of other people would be kind of, well, I sort of didn't know that. And then a whole lot of both of those crowds, would go, well, I sort of don't see the importance of either knowing it or not knowing it. Okay? That's weird. That's strange. Because you understand the kinds of information, that is, the kinds of energy that life has no business letting people have directly or in a more complex, a purer state. And so it seems to seep out over long periods of time. And then sometimes a little burst of it happen, but it doesn't happen on the basis of a flood. No offense to Noah and all those good old writers back then. But the flood doesn't tell you anything. The way life works is you look out the window, you kind of do a double take and you're not sure whether it's raining or not. That's the way life lets this info out, this kind of energy. Or even you get outside and you're walking along and you think, I'm getting wet, it's raining. And you look up, and as soon as you look up, it's like it stopped. You think, oh, what kind of trick is this? And then you look off where you're thinking, and it's drip, 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 and it's more rain. And you look again. And then maybe even you want to look around at somebody next to you, and they seem dry. And then you look back and it's raining, it's not raining. That's what I'm talking about. That is the strangeness. It's almost as though large segments, almost the middle class, the bell curve of humanity, that some of these things, it's almost as though a whole lot of the people sort of know it. A whole lot of them sort of don't, but they can hear about it and go, well, yeah, I can hear that. Kind of makes sense. And if I said, did you know that? They'd say, well, I sort of didn't know that. But the whole point is, it will fly, at least it will sail, it will float in the city, and nobody gets all upset. They don't try to shoot it down. People don't go run and hide. They don't believe that Orson Welles has been reincarnated and pulling that shit on the radio again. It's just there, and it's to a large number of them, it's sort of that I didn't know it, I sort of knew, but it's not real spooky. It's like, well, I sort of didn't know that, but if you say that's important, I can sort of accept that. Do you see? It just sort of slips into the city like a thief in the night. It just kind of slips in. And some people seem to recognize it sort of, and some don't sort of. And then out of those two groups, a large segment of them sort of don't see the importance one way or the other. But the information will almost fly. It will almost be accepted. They will almost let it into the city without trying to kill it or to shoot it. They will almost let it rain on them without having a fit, without believing, wait, the devil uses on us again. I didn't go through all that just to kill time. It is a dastardly, beautifully balanced and complex way that this kind of information gets out. All right. Here's what I'm thinking is getting. Remember, I told you I was going to get close to the more complex and the stranger, and I also told you, whether you thought there was any connection, I was about getting close to closing out the first act of this activity. So if you can keep all that in mind, here it comes. And this is a prime example. But to a lot of people, it sounds sort of strange, like they sort of didn't know it, and to a large segment it would sound sort of not too strange, and I sort of knew that. But nobody does. And I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to tell you why people think they know things and they don't. There's a reason. Mathematical, chemical. But here's the thing that I was going to tell you tonight, and that is this. I like two versions. You can have either one you want, because they're slightly pointed at different angles. If something's not important to you, it's not important. If it doesn't mean anything to you, it's meaningless. Here's the strangeness. You might say, after hearing this, that I exaggerate to say that a lot of people, ordinary people, could say, well, I sort of knew that. Some of you might say, well, hell, everybody knows that. But they don't. Tut, tut. If it's not important to you, it's not important. Now, I said exactly what I meant, and I'm telling you something that people do not know. When I say that it's not important, I'm not holding anything back. There is no tacit part to that sentence. That doesn't mean that it's relatively unimportant. That doesn't mean that you might be deluded. It does not mean, finally, this. It does not mean, well, it could be important, but it's just not important to you. No. No, no, no. If it's not important to you, it's not important. There are no mouse holes here. But see, it's sort of known in the city because they would say, well, all right. They would say, well, you're speaking psychologically at the very least. What you're saying is that if somebody thinks something's not important, then it's almost a circular sentence that you're saying, because you're just saying, well, if it's not important to you, it's not important to you. And you know damn well that's not what I said. Of course, I wouldn't say it to the city because they don't like to hear people get pushy. Well, they don't like to hear people that know what they're doing get pushy. They don't mind other people getting. But if you know what you're doing, get pushy in the city, history is replete with examples of what happens to you in case you don't know. So I wouldn't talk like that to city intelligence. If it's not important to you, it is not important. Period. It's awfully close to a period. I told you not to ever fool with periods, that everything is a comma. But this is very, very close. If it has no meaning to you, it's meaningless. Not to you, it's meaningless. In the city, this is sort of not known, even if they heard the words, and I kept pushing it, and I said, no, you people didn't hear me, speaking to city intelligence. I said, if it's not important to you, it's not important. I didn't say if it's not important to you, it's not important to you. Because that's what you think you're hearing me say, right? And they'd go, all right, yeah, that's what I think we're hearing you say, because that's the only thing you can say. Because if that's not what you're saying, you're full of it. Because there are things that are important that everybody knows that's just simply not important to certain people. We know it's important to be charitable, to be honest. And we know there are people who are dishonest. But we know that it's important to be honest. No, they don't. But that is what seems to be so terrifying of those that are judged to be or guessed to be sans conscience. Unrepented killers. People that do some terrible act, they find them guilty. A whole line of witnesses say, you did it, you did, you did it. They go, all right. And they wait. And he picks his teeth. He says, how much longer is this going to take? That is terrifying. Why? I'm going to tell you why. They don't know it, and it's on a very simplistic level, but that is living proof that if it's not important to you, it's not important. Right. Back at the city level, they are absolutely correct. This cannot be true. This is not true. Because at the level of simplistic, more simplistic intelligence, even those, now disregard what seems to be an unrepentant killer. I didn't mean to make that as an absolute example, but I'm just saying that that occurs, that the press, the judicial system, the warden will come out with the stories that the son of a gun seems to have no remorse for what he did. And all it has to be is somebody apparently from the middle class of the city, a judge, a guard even, to say something like that. And the press snap it up in a minute, and people read it. And they'll talk about it for days. You mean that's the guy that murdered 17 people, yeah? I mean, there's no doubt. They had 147 eyewitnesses, and they say they have watched him here sitting on death row, and all the time of the trial, never showed one moment of remorse. Nothing. They sentenced him, and he yawned. And it doesn't seem to be some kind of act, because he didn't go around shooting off his mouth hollering, "I'm not afraid to die." He hadn't said anything about it. Nothing. It's terrifying, even if it's not literally true. The appearance of it terrifies people. Always has. But now let me tell you why it's not true. Why they believe it's true in the city and it's not true, and forget what appears to be those kind of examples. In the city, if someone says, "All right, I'm a thief," I think the whole world is made up of either those who get took or those who do the taking. I am one of the latter. City intelligence could say, well, there's an example wherein what I told you is wrong, because there's a guy, and prisons are full of those. Wall Street's full of them, evidently. Your family's probably full of them. Of someone who says, all right, honesty is not important to me, and it's not true. They can say, I do not live by your kind of moralities when it comes to business. In other words, I am what you people would call dishonest. It's not important to me. That's not true. It is important. He can say, well, honesty means nothing to me. That's not true. It means something to that person. At the ordinary level, there is no escape from anything in the city by any definition. I know it changes a little bit here and there in what is considered honest. In a strict Orthodox Muslim area, could be broken apart or look to be a little more liberal in a Orthodox Christian area. I know all that. But at any given area where you are and your intelligence seems to be grounded in that, whatever that area, that religion, that culture, as they normally call it, says is important to everybody in there at that level, including those who say, it's not important to me. It is. They just say, well, it's meaningless. The morality of Islam, yeah, I grew up here, I studied, and I've read other religions. None of them mean anything to me. And I'll tell you, my own religion means nothing. Meaningless. That is not true. And the person could then begin to foam at the mouth and grab you by the lapels and say, I ceased going to the mosque. I threw away the Quran I had. I won't even admit I'm a Muslim anymore. It is meaningless. I'm just telling you, I went all through that. It is meaningless to me. That is not true. A whole lot of you know what I'm saying. It is not true. Do you see why in the city that which people can say, people scream, people insist, I am not concerned with, I do not find any meaning in religion? And you may know a person, they may be part of your family, they may have a great cultural, educational background, and you might even say, well, what possible profit does this person expect if they are lying? In other words, they've got to be sincere. This person is standing there telling me that his religion, his forefathers' religion, or any religion, is meaningless. And he says it. He says, I'm just thinking it's meaningless. To me. To me. I don't know about the rest of you. Maybe other people get something out of it. My parents evidently did. To me, it is meaningless. I mean meaningless. It's not so. It can't be so. Do you see why? Or do you maybe sort of see why that I can say that it is not known, to wit, if it's not important to you, it's not important. If it has no meaning to you, it's meaningless. In the city, that is not known at the level of more simplistic, of old, ordinary intelligence. That is not true. It is not possible. It is not correct. It is not feasible. It's an incomplete sentence. Because ordinary intelligence says, well, all you're saying, what you mean to say is, if it's not important to you, it's not important to you. I got enough lung power, if that's what I wanted to say, that's what I would have said. I could throw in that second you. But that is not it. If it's not important to you, it's not important. That, among several other things I brought out over the last 6 months, is an absolute line of demarcation, if you can see it, between your old intelligence, if you begin to hear that, and what this is all about. And it's not a message from Mars. It's not strange. Contrary, it almost sounds so mundane, it just sounds like I blew it. That's the strangeness. That is the strangeness of the information. That sort of, large numbers of people sort of go, well, yeah, I knew that. You don't have it exactly right, but you know what you're saying. Sure. I got a cat that probably knows that. I can turn on TV and I can call my cat and say, look, it's a Tom and Jerry cartoon. And I don't know what it is. I guess it's the makeup of the eye, the physical eye of a cat, or its interest in life. The cat can look. I can try to, it won't even focus on the TV as far as I can tell, but I can pick him up and hold him right in front of the set. And it's like he's not even looking. He looks around like this. And so TV is not important to him because it's not important to him. Let me pull at the corners of this. This is sort of known and it's sort of not known. Now, in the full sense that I mean it, of course, it's not known at all. But what ordinary intelligence takes me to be saying is sort of known. To say, well, if you don't consider, forget the cat. If you say, well, TV means nothing to me. I don't even have a television. Don't want one, don't miss it. I've been at other people's house and they turned on. TV is meaningless to me. That cannot be true. I'm not going to argue it. I don't have to know who you are. I don't have to know how educated you are. I don't have to know what your hobbies are. I'm telling you that is not true. TV is a part of the city. Now, I'll believe anybody. I wouldn't disbelieve somebody say I don't have a TV. I believe it. Never had one. I believe it. They can say I don't want one. I believe it. They can say I swear to God I'll never buy one. I believe it. All that's meaningless. But see, if I can pull out right at the corners of some of this where it begins to overlap itself in the city, that it's sort of known, but sort of doesn't count up on the hill, out in the bushes, and sort of can be part of the great mechanism that life keeps everything stable, keeps this information. Once it begins to seep out, it comes out around the corner and gets into people like me and some of you, so it doesn't flood all out. The best you can make of it, the best you can tell people, falls into what I'm saying is this kind of extreme strangeness, because you can tell people that if somebody suspects, I just know you know something strange. I just know there's something weird about you. I've always known it. And you go, okay. They say, all right, what is it? You're actually from another planet, aren't you? And you say, oh, no. And they say, all right, you're from another time. Somewhere you got in the time. No, no, I don't say that. All right, what is it that's weird? It's something you know? I go, all right, yeah, let's put it that way. And they say, well, what is it? And I say, all right, if it's not important to you, it's not important. They don't know. They think it's a joke. But I misjudged you. I thought you were weird on the basis that you had some kind of secret, dastardly information. But is that it? And if I said, yeah, that's it. You understand? So what does fly in the city? What does classify somebody being strange is to say, what is it makes you so strange? Is it some kind of something that you know or something? In the city they say, well, you caught me. You know where you've seen photographs of Orion? Well, there's this small star, and I'm from right past that star. And people go, oh my God, is that strange? God, really? Really? You wouldn't lie to me. No, that's where I'm from. But if it is really the strange information, Now, that's a decent hobby. But all I'm pointing out to you is what kind of information, what kind of useful energy has come from that? Nothing. You might as well have a TV. But if it is real information, how's it going to come out? And I just pointed out, part of the strangeness is it does not strike humans, ordinary intelligence, in the way that upsets life. But I was saying this is sort of known. And I was going to point out, I already touched on it. For instance, here we are circa February 1989, for those that might see this at some other time. We got this continuing apparent international dance going on between the fundamentalist government, secular and spiritual leader, and the former Miss Persia, now known as Mrs. Iran. And we have a man who is the leader of the country who's written a book years ago, if any of you know, that goes into such matters as what kind of torment, or no, it's such things as how many times can you sleep with a goat before it's considered a mortal sin. That's in his book. He's like the Pope of that part of Islam. All right, now some of you can laugh at that if you didn't know about it, but it's literally, he's got such things as that included. And as you know, apparently parts of our world has had serious run-ins with them. And so you can say, all right, Iran, and what the Ayatollah has to say is important. But now think about it a second. Now some of the things that's happened, hostages being taken, etc. But now what the Ayatollah has to say, such as, all right, as your spiritual leader, I'm going to say, if you sleep with a goat and you're married and you do it more than 3 times, you got to do such and such. Now if you're single, you can do it 5 times and you still got to pay the same thing. All right, and you listen to that. And let's say that you're not Iranian, you're not Islamic to that fundamental level, and you hear that, and besides a snigger or a laugh, it gets awfully close to being what? Meaningless. It's almost known that there are things going on within the body of life that almost literally have no importance to you. Almost. Because then if I jumped out and say, aha, now what I was talking about 10 minutes ago, you said, nah, if it's not important to you, it's not important to you. You were saying that's what I meant. Yeah. But now look, you've got millions, if not billions of people, at least you got millions, who take this man to be their spiritual leader. You're a Catholic, right? Let's say I'm talking to the Catholic intelligence of some city. And he says, yeah. And so do you understand that the Ayatollah is the same as their Pope? And so I say this person is educated enough and go, well, yeah, you're right. And I said, all right. And you realize he stands up and hollers, all right, everybody quit sleeping with goats for the weekend. It's a national religious holiday. And millions of men will go, yeah, we will. That they take it as the Word of God. And so this city intelligence says, all right, yeah, you're right. Now, that's right. Now, a couple minutes ago, I was telling you that a real secret, information, energy that is not known in the city, that just stinks of liberation and shocking news, is that anything that's not important to you is not important. And you said that that wasn't true, that what I meant was anything that's not important is not important to you. You remember that? And city intelligence would say, yeah. Now, so what do you make of this that we just brought up, this example about the Ayatollah? That it means something to millions of people, enough that they will die. What? Just on his word. And you're saying it's meaningless. Do you mean that? And for a second, I might almost get city consciousness here and there. Old intelligence would go, does anybody see? Now I'm talking to you. I'm not doing the scene now. That intelligence here and there can almost, it's like a crack. It's like a place where 2 things overlap, and it's going by on a real fast rocket sled, and they think, yeah, it's almost, no. That there can be things that apparently, by all reasonable observations in human life, the word of the Ayatollah to millions of people is important. It would be the living example of the word important. Right? Yeah. All right, to you is it important? And we're not talking about something that's hostile toward Islam. We just talking about somebody who's got a general knowledge, and I said, well, ignore all the political stuff. But him talking about how many times a man can sleep with a goat. A good Muslim, he called, how many times a good Muslim can sleep with a goat before it becomes, a serious sin. A mortal sin, I guess a Catholic would say. All right, to this guy, and he thinks about it, it's just meaningless, almost. Whereas it cannot be, in some way, here it comes, objectively meaningless, or else we've got a large part of life's body, these millions of Shiite Muslims who will die at one word from their leader, the Ayatollah. So you got that there in the body of life going on coevally as we speak, and this guy, my Catholic, my ordinary city Western consciousness, intelligence is going, all right, it's important to them, so it's important to a large part of life's body, and I either got to discount that they're all nuts, they're all crazy, and they've been around almost as long as Christianity, awfully close. In other respects, they seem sane enough. Is it cultural? I don't know what. You're right, it seems important. And I say, is it important at all to you? I mean, are you angry about it? No. Does it bother you that anybody's concerned about how many times they can sleep with a goat and still get to paradise? No. It doesn't arise in my life. I've got no need for that information. Whether it's true or false, it's just meaningless. Just for a split second, I could almost get some intelligence to go, and then we shut down. But it's sort of known. We've got to turn the tape around. Let's skate faster. We only got half the side of this tape left. And who knows? Tonight could be the end of Act 1. I just said it was coming up. Here's another, forget the Ayatollah for a minute. Here's another, example. The poor, the real poor, seem to show almost no concern, relatively speaking, to the rest of the population in any state, any city. The poor seem to be almost passive, nonchalant toward crime. Been noted for thousands and thousands of years. Now, what's the obvious? Well, part of it, what's the biggest crime in this part of the world, probably all the world? It's theft of property. Thou shalt not steal. All right, if you've got nothing, you've got no real fear of loss, right? So they'll be interviewing people, all of you know this, I don't have to string the example out, throughout the world, in the most civilized, take our country, your city. Something will happen, some dastardly deed, or some news show is trying to run up their ratings or whatever, and they decide to do a series and they'll go out to some housing project. They'll go to the real poor side of town and they'll try to interview people. And they'll try to talk to them about, the poverty, and of course everybody goes, yeah, tell me about it. You drove over here to tell us we're poor. But then they get into, well, let's talk about something else. The high crime rate. Not only is this area disadvantaged and you've got poor streets and they don't keep up all the city services here, but this area, all the statistics show that you people suffer the greatest crime rate. It's just way out of proportion to the rest of the city. And usually they don't even get smart like, well, tell me about it. They look like, well, yeah, like it rains. You spit and it hits the ground. To them, it's what? It's almost meaningless. It seems to be of no importance. Just almost unimportant. It's always been that way. Would that not almost qualify, if I could get the right kind of educated, insightful, city intelligence, and say, do you see? And let's assume that the person I'm talking to now, representing the larger part of city consciousness, does not live on the poor side of town. And I say, is crime important or not? And nowadays, in most of the world, especially our part of the world, it heads the list. So the interviewers and the pollsters say of what's the biggest problem you think is facing our society. The United States, Western Europe, as far as the last time I read, crime. And so you ask the guy, is crime a problem? And city intelligence says yes. So crime is important. I should say so, my good man. Supremely important. That's all right. Do you realize that half this city in which you live, half of this area, is below the poverty line? Well, yes, I'm aware of such figures. All right, these people over here, you've seen them interviewed. You want to go over there and find out and ask them, try to get them discussing crime. It is almost as though it's of no great importance. If I said, well, do you want to be robbed? It's, well, no. Do you want to be beat up, mugged, shot? No. But if you ask them, is crime important? We want to do a meaningful interview here in this part of town, and we want to discuss crime. They literally look as though they know what it means, but crime, it's almost as though they're what? Speaking another language? I don't know. But I would have city intelligence there, maybe for a minute, would almost go, ooh, because he would say, or she would say, representing city consciousness, that crime is an objective problem. That just because somebody says, if I could get somebody dumb enough, city intelligence might say, that would go by what I've been telling it, that somebody would say, wait a minute, crime's not important to me, so crime's not important. Then that would be wrong, would it not? And city intelligence would say, I should say so, my good man. So I would say crime then is an objective reality. It is important in and of itself. Even if there's somebody over here, if we found somebody that said crime is unimportant, they would simply be speaking from their own deranged view, am I right? And so you kind of say, yeah. And then I'd say right quick, now it's going to fly by you real quick, will you listen? And maybe it goes, well, all right. And I say, how do you explain that we got a large segment of your city that the truth is, to them, crime is not real important? Of course, if I was dumb enough to get serious at pushing the city, then I could point this out, and I'm pointing out to you people, of course, in another way. I could say, look, even though you got the good old binary consciousness, you got to face it, old chap. You can't have it both ways. And it would go, yeah, I can. Which, of course, it can. Revolutionary intelligence, which I should start using more than saying the real revolutionists, or letting Kairoot say such things. Like we're talking about a noun, a person. We're not talking about a person. We're not even talking about me. We're not talking about you. We're talking about a revolutionary condition. We're talking about a state in which at times you apparently are the medium for a different kind of energy. As you would think of it, you have different thoughts. You think in a different way. That is not weird in the sense that, ooh, I believe that maybe I am from another planet and forgot about it. No, you start to have strange thought patterns, like you look around and such things strike you as, hey, if it's not important to me, that is anybody individually, it's not important. And you think, boy, I hope Larry or somebody didn't hear me think that. Well, not Larry, but you hope your mother, the Pope, the chief of police. What you hope is the city in general, that it's thoughts like this, in some way they can't pick them up on some kind of system they have, that police headquarters, or the KBG, the FBI, somebody can pick this up, because if they do, once you start to have it, you realize this is strange. If they track me down, maybe I can pull this. If they say, are you the person been having those strange thoughts? I can say, yes, because I'm from Pluto. Maybe I'll throw them off, because they don't find that strange. They go, oh, that's all right, come on, we got the wrong guy. But what if they really know that I'm beginning to look around and I realize that if not important to me, it's not important? You think, well, where can I hide if they find this out? All right, the state, this revolutionary condition, which you're going to have to look at as being transitory, being able to think, or those thoughts being able to have you, that this kind of energy finds you to be a reasonable medium of conduction. You could look at it as being a kind of enriched poverty. It is a kind of complex simplicity. And I'm not just trying to play with oxymorons, and I'll try and sketch out for you why. In the revolutionary condition, or if there were such a thing as a permanent revolutionist, if we were talking about a noun, it would be that such a person would not have unimportant, meaningless possessions, such as believing that something is important when it's not important to him. Or that it should be. There is where life has everyone's intelligence tied. That's where a lot of this was going tonight, in case you missed it, right then. When I pointed out, and enough of you laughed, enough of you felt it, when I said that someone who says, my father's religion is no longer important to me, it just means nothing. That's not true. It cannot be true. If it is a part of city life, if it's a part of the CO2 floating around in that city, and nowadays you can just about talk about the planet Earth as being the city, the state, nobody can escape from it. You cannot pick out which molecules that you like to breathe. Well, I like some of these, but I see some over here that I believe some people must have breathed those at one time, must have been Muslims, and I don't have anything to do with that. You got no choice. You either find anything that is now worldwidely held to be meaningful and important. You either find it important, or all of you got to know this, or you're hostile toward it, which is to find it important. You all know that by now, don't you? Somebody, I took you to a cleaner, more complex area to even make the example. But somebody who is militantly anti-Islamic, you do, all of you realize that. You hadn't forgotten it. That Islam is important to that person. The guy who is ready to die to defeat it. What the Ayatollah says is important. And the person can holler, no, it's not, because the man's an idiot. He's a fool. And of course, I wouldn't be pushy enough in the city to say, sir, did you hear what I just said? I leave that to you, to do it to yourself. Now here's the subtle part. That it's either important to you, or you feel as though it should be. You think that it should be. That is how life has set everything in motion at the 3D level, and there is no ordinary escape possible. That is a part of the churning up of your account. It is a part of your apparent critical facilities that you can, somebody can be interviewed on TV, a national leader, a religious leader, a would-be hero to many people, a villain, it doesn't matter what, something comes across the scope of your intelligence, your consciousness. You either find it important, positively or negatively, you either rail against it, or you holler hip hip hooray, or else you feel as though it should be. And when I say that this kind of intelligence, this kind of state would be really not unreliably referred to as enriched poverty, it is the difference in the truly simplistic, the more simplistic, not just without physical possessions, but the good old more simplistic people who normally are the poor, which is not the point, but they normally are the poor. If you want to look for examples of good old bricklayers, ditch diggers that dropped out of the 6th grade and are functionally illiterate. Now you can say that they do not have the same kind of ordinary, complex possessions that perhaps a college graduate does, someone who majored in philosophy, someone who has an interest in psychology. You can say that at one level they seem to have less of that kind of baggage. That is, if you tried to ask a bricklayer, just an average bricklayer, you know what I mean by an example. No offense to bricklayers, I used to work with bricklayers and all that shit. So don't, because I shouldn't say it, there are no bricklayers watching this on tape. Actually, I apologize, I don't have to. If you were to ask such a person, a bricklayer, ditch digger, if you were to ask him, have you ever heard the Ayatollah Khomeini, and you kept all this up, finally you got him, you said, he's the guy on the news, and he's over there in that country, and he wears a thing wrapped around his head, and he got this beard. And he goes, oh yeah. And he gets out there and he talks, and thousands of people going, yeah, I've seen all that. Do you know he's the one that killed captured some of our people? Yeah, I remember, I heard about that. And if I said, do you realize, and I started saying some of the things, tried to repeat some of the things that this man has said about the border disputes between Iran and Iraq, I asked him about that, and now if I said, well, you want me to tell you some of the differentiations that he tries to draw between his sect, the Shiite Muslims and the Sunni Muslims. And I started to talk to him about what some of the things the Ayatollah has said that are important and meaningful to millions of people. Now I could say it to such a person, and this would get close to something I want you to see, that he would not find it important, not even positively or negatively. I kept on. If I started about sleeping with goats, I might get his attention. But if I just start talking about the general theological basis of the Muslim Shiite sect or the Ayatollah's general political philosophies, and I didn't really touch on how they affected our country, maybe. But if I just talked in general, he might get to this point of, well, I don't see the importance of it. And then if I say, all right, here's what I'm trying to prove to some people I was talking to, do you feel like you should find it important? You get awfully close to people at that level and go, well, I don't know. And I said, yeah. See, now here's how it goes. Now I'm playing the part of life. Not sitting now, I'm playing the part of the flow of life itself through man. Now, so you can say that this guy wearing a towel and an old scraggly beard, you can say that he is unimportant and meaningless to you. Yeah. But do you realize that the kind of warfare, the terrorism that they've been in, they have killed, they claim themselves. At last count, about 400 Americans in various ways over the last 2 years. They disrupted the shipping of oil, which could have put you out of the car business. You could have been having to ride a bus to work. In fact, you didn't keep up with that thing going in the Persian Gulf when they were in active warfare with Iraq, did you? Huh? But if I drug it out just a little bit and say, well, what happens over there, you may say it's unimportant, but it could end up either making you do without a car, it could run gas up to like $3 a gallon. We could end up with a bunch of people that look like that don't want you fooling around. You can't drink. If they take over the world, no alcohol. What? And if you fool around, forget about your wife divorcing you and getting, taking your car, they kill you. His feeling then. If he said, well, I wouldn't like that. I don't, this guy, what was his name? I'll write it down if I could write it. Somebody write his name down. I don't like it is built in, even though he did not know the specifics. I was going to use for an example the Ayatollah and that particular sect of Islam and how it could eventually, here, how about this for you, how it would eventually impact. See, I can use new language, old words in new ways. How this might impact him personally. Now, it is built in to the nervous system already, human intelligence. That, all right, the guy says, I never heard all that, but I'm glad you told me, because if it could run up gas like that, and I said, all right, here's the point. I'm not trying to run your life, but you got a TV, right? You watch TV, yeah. At least, if there's nothing great on, once or twice a week something, maybe you should just watch the news, because things like this happen. I know. You probably don't know where Iran is, do you know? It's on the other side of the world. He said, okay. I said, but things like this, they have. It may take an hour. It could take several days. It could take several months. But what goes on can have an effect on you. And if we got too many people walking around the world that doesn't know about that, like you didn't think it had any effect on you, there's no reason you should know what was going on in a foreign country. You went, yeah. But now I've talked to you. Do you see? And he goes, well, yeah, you're right. Now, so how many of your friends do you think even ever heard the Ayatollah? And he said, well, probably none of them. Now, so would you realize that we need more people better educated? What I'm getting at is he would be wired up, everyone is, to apparently feel, he would express it, I could get him to do it, guilty over not finding this to be important. I'd have to go through several steps, like make him feel guilty that he doesn't keep up with the news more, that he spends too much time watching professional wrestling, or when he should spend a little time keeping up with the news. He'd go, well, you're right. Once I showed him the importance, how it was meaningful to him. Everybody finds everything important to them, or they think they should. That's what's known as guilt. It does not come about from your religion, does not come about from your upbringing, does not come about from your conscience, does not come about from a God. Everything that's important to the city, everything that's important to man, everything that's important to man by way of life is important to every individual, or else they think that it should be. Back to where I started the shank of this evening's comments. If it is not important to you, and you're of this, if it's not important to you, it is not important. Period. This is true in a more complex way in the city, but it has no value, it has no currency there, it has no use. But it is true. It is another view to see the basis of the so-called, or at least I'm going to so-call it, the Tower of Babel effect, the miscommunication of people. It's not because somebody over here is speaking Spanish and somebody else is speaking Portuguese, because they all got a second language, everybody. But it's more than that. It's that some people think, well, wait a minute, this is important to me, and he's acting like it's not important to him. Therefore, I'm going to have to cut his throat or ask him to move to another planet. Because this, in some way, is objectively, clinically, quote, important, and these people do not see it. They're infidels, they're fools, they're uneducated. They're nuts. They're dangerous. And so therefore people think, well, we don't understand each other. Well, now, of course, I understand what's going on. I understand that these people are dumb. Give me 5 minutes into the tape. I am awfully inclined to stop right here tonight. And I'm awfully inclined to leave you with one of my musical questions and excursions of, can you smell it all? Can you use your own thinking process? You got to strain against the city limits. That if what I told you is absolutely, literally, three-dimensionally the truth, it is correct. It is straining at going around the corner from the 3D world, that if it is not important to you, it's not important. Does anybody smell what I said was a dangerous threat of unbridled liberation that might even get you to try to fill in the blanks of my question about what if the partnership, this apparent partnership arrangement, was so that one part was in charge of blanking and the other part was in charge of blanking? And what if it had any connection with the fact that the world was big enough for everybody? Well, yeah, I like every time I hear it, but shit, but nothing. What if? Here I go. Crude city. What if, literally the way you are right now, anything that's not important to you is not important. Period. Fini. Not theoretically, but if you saw it, no matter what it was, the love of your family, the love of your country, the love of God, the hatred of your family, or the lack of any of that, that you have no feeling toward your family, you got no feeling toward any idea of a God, you're not patriotic, you're not anti-patriotic, it's just meaningless. What if that was the, what do they call it in the city, answer to that one area? Rather than this continuing churning, this continuing partnership, I don't treat it with enough importance. I treat it with too much importance. I don't treat it like it has any importance, and I know Larry's going to get me someday. That I know I don't feel like it, I don't think about it as being important, and I should. What if that is not so? But only one or two people here and there can ever see that. How unmystical. How weird. How strange. If it's not important to you, it is not important. And I'll get cruder. What if there is some sort of objective reality that I could talk about roughly, three-dimensionally, and I told you this, that if it's not important to you, and I'm talking about you, not generically, and not you using the word you as emblematic, but you, that if whatever it is not important to you, it is not important cosmically, objectively, clinically, then that thing, I don't care whether it's called God, family, love, hatred, wealth, cheating, honesty, if to you it has no importance, no meaning, it has none universally. And don't say, well, you're just saying it has none with me. Don't keep telling me what I'm saying. It has none. There is one of the answers. That's why it has no importance. That's why it has some importance. That's why it's debated as to whether it has any importance or not, because it does and it doesn't. That's the only reason anything's debated. It's not debated so that they can try and arrive at the truth. That's always right before them. The reason it's debated is, all right, what's the question? And they tell me the question. I say, all right, so there are two possible answers, right? Now I'll say, right. I say, you don't understand why you're debating it? Well, you're always trying to arrive at the answer. No. The reason you're debating it is there are two answers. Why else would you debate it? If there was one answer, there'd be no debate. I'm awfully close to telling you in one area, one answer. If it's not important to you, it's not important. The case is closed. Perry Mason is off for the day. They're going to run the credits. The show may not ever come back on the air. It's not important. If it has no meaning for you, it's meaningless. Meaningless. No conditions. Nothing will ever slip back up on you. It's meaningless from every corner of the universe. Not just you. It's meaningless. What if, as crude as I threatened that I was being, which may sound to be fairly straightforward, and you could see that if it had no meaning to me, it was meaningless, then whatever it was, whatever seemed to be the problem, the thought, the situation, that if you truly saw this as meaningless, and you never thought about it again in your life, nobody smells any danger, you never thought about it again. Well, think of the most meaningless thing you can now. What if I said, well, I know a guy right now that lives right outside of Boise, Idaho, who says he actually came from Mars. I know where he is. I got his post office box number. We could write him. I'm just trying to make up something. I would hope that most of you would find that to be about as meaningless as anything I'd come up with. And I said, well, if you don't have to raise your hand, but if anybody wants his address, you can ask me later. And at least remember it in case you ever want it, if you want me to put you in touch with him. I would assume that I'll just forget about it. If not, don't let on. But what if the questions that seem, I don't care, for reasons that I always have, I've oftentimes make them to apparently pretty silly putty kinds of examples. But take things that are serious examples to you. The way that your mother, your father harangues you, or used to, maybe they're dead. And it's something that was always that you do not treat me in a meaningful manner. Or if you're feeling that priest, your mother, your rabbi, your friend says you do not treat your religion, you do not treat our culture, you do not treat your attitude toward life, you do not treat the matters of honesty, you don't seem to treat the whole concept of getting a better education so that you can be more successful. You don't seem to treat the idea of being faithful to a sexual partner as having any importance. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. I'm not going to name any more times. It doesn't matter. I tried to cover it all the way from ideas of God to thoughts of your family, to children, to decency, to indecency. If it is not important to you, it's not important. But life's importance is, even if it doesn't seem to be important to you, if it's important in the city, then you're going to feel like somewhere, you're going to think that it should be important to me. I should think about it more. I should look at it. I should study it. And you should not. If it's not important to you and you could see it, you'd never think about it again. Would anybody like to really be frightened? And if I am telling you very straightforwardly something that is correct, and I tell you that once you see when things are unimportant to you, that's the last time you'd think about it, how quickly do any of you fear that you might run out of ordinary things to think of? What if it become like the world's worst example or the best example of a worn-out TV sitcom kind of marriage, that you and the partnership, suddenly, there you sit, and there's nothing to talk about. It is an enriched poverty. One thing I want to touch back before I close out, that I was using examples such as the uneducated, unsophisticated, archetypical ditch digger. There's a kind of enriched poverty of not having those kinds of meaningless possessions, but it's not, of course, the same as someone automatically at that level, because they do not understand their simplicity at all. They do not understand how it fits into a more complex whole. They don't understand the relationship of more simplistic, more complex parts of life operating as a whole. Whereas to understand what I'm talking about for yourself is to pristinely hear all of that declared throughout your nervous system, throughout everything you can feel, hear, taste, smell, see. But there is a kind of literal poverty to it, that you do not have useless possessions. So you can't worry about being robbed. You got none to lose. It is the supreme. Religions all talk about sacrifice. But the real sacrifice is to simply give up the meaningless. The correct, more complex form of poverty is to be without that which is unimportant. You'd be surprised what they'll cut down on. Of course, I'm really talking about here, but I got to tell you, it begins to reflect itself out there. It's not the point. All of you can collect anything you want to and have all the possessions. There's no literal conflict with this, but I am telling you that much of what people own, if you can't guess it, is simply a reflection of holding on to that which is meaningless and useless. Some of you used to like it. I'd every now and then bring it up, and I'd say that a real revolutionist has got no sense. They're just an intelligent person. Why would they own anything that was either useless or not beautiful? And every now and then when I bring it out, some of you will smile and your face will light and you write it down. And I can feel in your nervous system you thinking about all the junk you got, or maybe 1 or 2 examples right then, or maybe you went home later and thought about it for a few seconds. That, look at this stuff that I have collected that at one time was important to me and meaningful. And I saved up, I stole, I got this thing, and now not only do I not use it, it doesn't seem to have any aesthetic value. I don't find it attractive, it's just there. It's just... That does not show anything of being involved with that which is unimportant and meaningless, and yet you're involved with it. That's just a hardwired. There is a material description, an example of it. But still the poverty I'm talking about is you do not have that which is unimportant in you, and the real sacrifice, the real poverty is you no longer believe that you should have. It's meaningless to me, and it's meaningless. Not to me, but if it's meaningless to me, it's meaningless. There's nothing in my life having to do with this that I can ever do with this. There's no way I can suffer over it. There's no way I can make myself believe that it should be important. And I'm not asking how you got there. If I say, is your feeling of family love toward your mother and father of any importance to you? And you went, no. And I said, no, I'm not saying that you hate them or anything. You just went, no, it's just not important. Then the rest of it would be, if I had to ask, you know this in the city, if I said, well, what do you think about that? You go, well, I worry about it. In fact, I wish you hadn't brought it up. I wonder if maybe I'm Rosemary's baby's kid brother. Am I some kind of intrinsically flawed seed that life has put out? And so I can say, you mean that you really got no particular feeling toward your mother or father? No. But boy, what you must think about that? And you go, yeah. You know, I don't think about it all the time, but anytime I do think about it, it's important. The poverty is not simply having no feeling toward your mother or father or your religion or toward possessions. The poverty is knowing if it's unimportant to you, it's unimportant, and not having any feeling that it should be otherwise. That's the real poverty. That is, you start off, once you reach that level, it's like you start off and you've given away everything you got. You got a new chance to start over. No possessions. You can get in your car and move. You can take it in one trip. You start off at ground zero, and here's the thing, is after that point, you can't help it. You don't have to plan anymore. You never pick up another possession that's useless, or at least not attractive. You do not. You don't have to try. It's like now you got the money you got, you can't buy stuff that's useless. It just never, either that or you don't ever go place that sells useless junk. Everywhere, you just don't get it. That is, you never again, now of course forget possessions, you never again pick up ideas, beliefs, feelings. They're all ideas. They're all physical, chemical operations of this. You never again pick up any idea that somebody says, I'm from Mars, and we should all be from Mars, or you should all listen to me because I have got the Martian secret. And you go, well, wait a minute, the guy sounds like he's nuts, but what if he's not? Maybe I should listen to this. Now you may say, well, that's a little small thing. You start it all over. You start junking up your room, and you get to you get up to this level of this kind of new intelligence, and you can hear such as that, and it's not one way or the other. You know it for what it is, but now you know that that which is unimportant to you is unimportant. Because you know more than that then, but I'm not even going to try to tell you that, because it's so simple that it make this sound real exotic. This is the end of the public meeting. Hold on for a second, I got a little epilogue. We're back. All right, you people out of town, a couple little business things. In all the cities getting these tapes, I want you to do this whenever it's humanly possible. Is before the meeting, before we're going to have the taping, that you're going to watch the tapes in other cities, if there are no strangers there, no public there, then I do not want any talking amongst you regular attendees before the tape is shown. You can do the numbers, those of you opening up earlier there. You can sit, you can drink coffee, do whatever you want to, but no talking. Understood? And if you've got people coming in, if you've got some public coming in, if there's some way you can juggle the room around, don't make a big deal, and they don't really let them know about it, particularly. But if you've got like separate rooms, and you've got the room where the TV and the taping is going on, you could try and consider it to be where no talking is going on. You don't have to tell them that, but if you people don't talk in there, they can probably catch on. If you can humanly arrange it before the meeting, do so. If you can reasonably and humanly arrange it after the tapes are through, for 5 minutes after the tape is through, I don't want any of you to talk. You can sit there, you can get up, go to the bathroom, go ahead and start getting your coffee, or whatever you're going to do, but for 5 minutes after the last tape, don't talk. And I know that most of you are doing more than one taping a night, and so between the tapings, don't talk. You understand? Because before the meeting, whatever time you open up the places where you're showing the tapes, if it's not going to annoy, frighten, upset any public people showing up, then do not talk from the time you get there. And then for 5 minutes after the last tape is shown, do not talk. But do not press on with this at the expense, even the possible expense of upsetting any people showing up. Don't make them think it is any weirder than they may find out it is or is not. And the other piece I sent out, I hope everyone caught on when I encouraged, and I know that some of you have already done something about it, of getting bigger television sets, making the areas where you're showing these tapes more comfortable in the general sense to strangers coming in and to yourself. But the bigger televisions, And I said I want them in stereo. And then the notes I sent you, I said 2-speaker. So I assume that all of you understand that you do know we're not recording this in stereo. But the point was, even if you're playing it back on a mono system, is I want 2 speakers so that there's not one single source of my voice coming out. Is I want 2 speakers set up, and most TVs now, well, surely somebody in the group knows how to do this. If not, write me and I'll tell you how to do it. But just simply run the sound and get 2 speakers just for my voice. They don't have to be anything fancy. Just little small speakers, but I want them so that you don't have this one little single source of a 4-inch speaker coming out of the TV set. It's to send out in the room so that my voice covers the room. Right? Well, that's all the business. Now I've got a serious excursion for everybody out of town and you people here. Since I am going to soon be closing up the first act of my life, of this activity, I didn't mean that dramatically, melodramatically, but I'm about to close up the first act. I want everybody, no exception, this is not a question, this is a command, a direction for everybody seriously involved with this. You've got, I'm not saying this has any relationship to what I'm going to do, but you have got 2 weeks for you to fulfill this. Is I want you, each and every person hearing this that's seriously involved here and in the other cities, I want you to close up a chapter, an act in your life that you, up until now, have found to be important. Do not tell me, do not tell anybody, do not tell yourself, do not write it down, don't admit it. The only requirement is that you found it meaningful. I'm not saying it has to have any meaning. Let's say that you have found it meaningful. If you smoke, that someday you got to quit, or you're afraid I'm going to tell you to quit. Or if you feel like you're too fat, and you've always felt that, and it's something that you overeat. I don't mean that you're just heavy. I don't care what it is. I don't care. I'm not saying that smoking is going to kill you or not. I'm not saying that it has any objective importance. All right? I'm not saying it has any clinical meaning. But if you have been thinking about it, it was important to you. Everybody's got one. It might be just a little teeny one. That you have thought many times that you'll just quit drinking coffee. Just stop it. It's just got to be such a habit. I don't care what it is. I'm not laying on any of these particular examples. But everybody has got, at least one of something that may seem small, it may seem large. If all you got's a large one, well, all I can tell you is tough shit. I mean, since I mentioned quit smoking, if you thought, well, boy, that's pretty strong, and I said about cutting out coffee, and you went, hey, that's better. If you don't drink coffee already, and you can't think of anything else, and it's every man and woman for himself. But I am giving you a direction. If you're going to stay in this, within 2 weeks, you close up an act on something. Whatever it is, you've had long enough. All of you are past the age of puberty. Most of you are no longer spring chickens, as the psychologists in Mississippi like to call part of the socio-chronological breakdown of society. So whatever it is that you have considered to be important, that had some meaning, negative or positive, something that you should change, most of you have had 10, 15, 20 years fooling around with it. Now, close up one act of one thing. Don't tell anybody, verbally or otherwise. Just do it. And do it within 2 weeks. No request, no suggestion. You got to do it. I don't care how small, how large. And no debate over, well, how important is this? If you felt as though you should have closed up this chapter, that's all that's required. I don't care how silly, how minuscule it may sound to ordinary intelligence compared to the rising crime rate and the rising crime rate. Do it.